Ronin wiped a smear of hydraulic fluid from his forehead, leaving a dark streak across his pale skin. The salvage deck of the orbital station Omega-4 was sweltering, the atmospheric scrubbers struggling to cope with the heat generated by the massive recycling furnaces. To the Valorian overseers, the heat was comfortable, reminding them of the volcanic plains of their homeworld. To Ronin, the only human on the station, it was a daily trial of endurance. He adjusted the collar of his frayed gray jumpsuit, his knuckles white as he gripped the rusted spanner. Around him, the clang of metal on metal and the hiss of cutting torches created a symphony of industrial decay. He was invisible here, a relic from a species that had barely made it past their own moon before the galactic consortium swallowed them up. Humans were considered good for manual labor, possessing nimble fingers and a strange resistance to despair, but little else. They were the galaxy's mechanics, janitors, and scavengers. Ronin didn't mind. Invisibility had its perks. It allowed him to find things others missed. On his workbench, hidden behind a stack of depleted energy cells, sat his latest project. It had come in with a shipment of debris from the fractured sector, a graveyard of ships from a war that ended 1,000 years ago. Most of it was slag, twisted metal that the Valorians would melt down for hull plating, but this object was different. It looked like a sphere of dull pitted iron, no larger than a melon with spider-like legs curled tightly against its chassis. The overseers had tossed it into the melt pile, mistaking it for a broken servo droid. Ronin had felt a hum when he touched it, not a vibration but a sensation like a heartbeat trapped in stone. For 3 weeks he had spent his breaks cleaning it. He didn't use the standard diagnostic tablets, they showed the object as dead mass. Instead, he used his eyes, his hands, and that peculiar human intuition that baffled his alien masters. He polished the corrosion away with a chemical rag, revealing a surface that wasn't iron at all, but a shifting matte black composite that seemed to absorb the light. "Hey, Earth Rat," a voice boomed from the walkway above. Ronin didn't flinch. He recognized the gravelly tone of Taskmaster Crook, a low-level Valorian with a chip on his shoulder and a sadistic streak a mile wide. "Stop fondling the garbage and get back to the fusion drive. The General arrives in the standard hour. If this deck isn't spotless, I'll feed you to the recyclers myself." Ronin looked up, his expression neutral. "It's done, Crook. The drive is calibrated to within 0.03% efficiency. Better than factory standard." Crook sneered, his mandibles clicking. "Don't talk back to me, fleshbag. Just stay out of sight. General Vexia doesn't like looking at vermin." Ronin nodded slowly and turned back to his bench. Vexia, the name sent shivers through the station's crew. She was the High Commander of the Valorian Vanguard, the Blade of the Void, a strategist who had crushed rebellions in a dozen systems. She was coming to inspect the scrap yields for the war effort. Ronin looked down at the sphere. He had finally found the hairline fracture in the casing. It wasn't broken, it was locked. He picked up a micro-laser tool he had modified himself, narrowing the beam to the width of a human hair. "Wake up, little guy," he whispered, a habit from his solitary days. "You've been sleeping long enough." He didn't force the mechanism, he guided it. He applied a gentle thermal pulse to the intake valve, mimicking the warmth of a living hand. The alien tech he'd seen usually required cold logic, passcodes, and hard interfaces. But this felt biological. It craved connection. As the laser heated the alloy, Ronin placed his other hand on the sphere's dome. He didn't think about code, he thought about waking up. He thought about the sunrise on Earth, a memory he held on to like a lifeline. Suddenly, the sphere shuddered. A soft, melodic chime resonated through the workbench, causing the loose screws to dance. The matte black surface rippled, turning liquid for a microsecond before hardening again into a sleek, pristine silver. A single eye, a horizontal slit of burning crimson light, opened in the center of the sphere. The legs uncurled, stretching with the grace of a waking cat. It didn't look like a rusted toy anymore. It looked dangerous, it looked beautiful. The sphere hopped once, testing its limbs, and then scuttled up Ronin's arm, settling on his shoulder. It let out a contented purr vibrating against his neck. Ronin chuckled, the sound foreign in the oppressive silence of the workshop. "Hungry?" he asked, holding out a spare power cell. The machine devoured the energy wirelessly, the crimson eye pulsing brighter. Ronin felt a strange connection, a phantom sensation in the back of his mind, like a radio tuning into a clear frequency. "Safe, Master. Awake." The words weren't spoken, they were felt. Before he could process the link, the heavy blast doors at the end of the deck hissed open. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The casual banter of the workers died. Tools were set down, heads bowed. Even Kruk, usually so loud and imposing, shrank against the wall, trembling. General Vexia strode onto the deck. She was imposing, towering over the tallest worker. Her armor was a masterpiece of crimson and gold ceramic, fitting her powerful form like a second skin. A cape of woven energy flowed behind her, crackling with static. Her skin was the color of obsidian, polished and dark, contrasting sharply with her eyes, two pools of glowing violet fire that seemed to see everything and nothing at all. She moved with a predatory grace, her hand resting on the hilt of a plasma saber at her hip. Flanking her were 4 elite guards, their faces hidden behind combat masks. "Report," Vexia said, her voice a smooth contralto that carried effortlessly over the hum of the machinery. Kruk scrambled forward, bowing so low his snout nearly touched the grating. "Great General, we have exceeded the quota. The melt is proceeding. We have salvaged 3 cruiser engines and—" Vexia raised a hand, silencing him. She wasn't looking at him. Her violet eyes were scanning the room, analyzing, judging. "The energy signature," she said, her tone sharp. "I detected a resonance spike. Omega class originating from the sector." Kruk looked confused, sweat beading on his forehead. "Resonance impossible, General. This is just scrap. Nothing active, just junk." Vexia ignored him, stepping past the trembling taskmaster. She walked through the rows of workbenches, her gaze sweeping over the terrified laborers. Ronin stood at the back in the shadows, the silver sphere hidden beneath the collar of his jumpsuit. He kept his head down, but he didn't bow. He watched her. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand hovered near her weapon. She wasn't just inspecting, she was hunting. She stopped 10 feet from Ronin's bench. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto him. For a moment there was silence. A Valorian general acknowledging a human was unheard of. "You," she said. The single word felt like a physical weight. Ronin stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. "General," Kruk gasped. "You filth, bow before the general." "Speak only when—" "Silence," Vexia commanded without looking back. Kruk choked on his words. Vexia stepped closer to Ronin, her height advantage significant. She smelled of ozone and crushed spices, a sharp, intoxicating scent. "You are human," she stated, as if identifying a rare insect. "Yes," Ronin replied simply. "And you are hiding something." It wasn't a question. She reached out, her gloved hand moving toward his shoulder. The sphere, sensing the threat, reacted faster than thought. It burst from Ronin's collar, leaping into the air. It didn't attack. It hovered between Ronin and Vexia, its legs splayed, the crimson eye widening and shifting to a blinding white. A low, terrifying sound filled the room, a sound like tearing metal, like the scream of a dying star. The elite guards instantly leveled their rifles. "Contact," one shouted. "Neutralize it." "Hold," Vexia screamed, her voice cracking with an emotion Ronin had never heard from a Valorian. Fear. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. The great general who had burned worlds was trembling. Her violet eyes were wide, fixed on the hovering silver sphere. The machine rotated slowly, scanning the guards, daring them to move. "Do not shoot," Vexia whispered, her voice shaking. "By the ancestors, and do not shoot." She looked at Ronin, her expression a mix of horror and awe.
"Human, what have you done?"
Ronin reached out a hand. "Down, Sparky, it's okay." The machine chirped, the terrifying white light fading back to a gentle crimson. It floated down and landed softly in Ronin's palm, nuzzling his thumb. Vexia stared at the scene, her chest heaving. You commanded it. It obeyed you." "I fixed it," Ronin said, shrugging. "It was broken in the scrap pile. Just needed a little tune-up." The silence that followed was absolute. Kruk looked like he was about to faint. Vexia slowly holstered her weapon, taking a step toward Ronin, her movements cautious like approaching a bomb. "Fixed it," she repeated, her voice breathless. "That is not a toy, human. That is a psionic-class autonomous interceptor, a relic of the Ethelgard." Kruk blinked. The God Killers? But they are myths extinct for 10,000 years. Vexia ignored him, her eyes never leaving Ronin's face. They were the weapons that ended the First Era. A single unit can destabilize a planet's core. They answer to no one. They have no interface, no controls. They choose their masters. She looked at the small machine purring in Ronin's hand, and it chose a scavenger. "Bring him," Vexia ordered, her voice regaining its steel, though her eyes remained wide. To my personal shuttle immediately." "But General," Crook protested.
He is station property, the paperwork.
Vexia turned on him, her eyes blazing. "If you speak again, Taskmaster, I will have you airlocked." She turned back to Ronin. "Come and bring your friend." Ronin hesitated, then nodded. He tucked the sphere into his pocket and followed the general, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. As he walked past the guards, he noticed they didn't look at him with contempt anymore. They looked at him with terror. The general's quarters on the flagship Vanguard were a stark contrast to the grime of the station. Walls of white marble, holographic displays of star charts, and a massive viewport overlooking the nebula. Ronin stood by the window watching the stars streak by. He had been given clean clothes, a black uniform without rank insignias, and allowed to shower. The sphere, which he had decided to keep calling Sparky, sat on his shoulder, scanning the room with curiosity. The door slid open and Vexia entered. She had removed her helmet and cape, revealing long braided silver hair that cascaded down her back. Without the armor's bulk, she looked less like a monument and more like a living being, though no less dangerous. She carried 2 glasses of iridescent blue liquid. She extended one to Ronin. "It is safe," she said, seeing his hesitation. "Valorian nectar, it helps with shock." Ronin took the glass. "I'm not in shock, General." Vexia studied him, sipping her drink. Her violet eyes traced the lines of his face, the calluses on his hands. "No, you are not. That is what intrigues me. Any other being would be cowering. You treat a weapon of mass destruction like a pet." "He was lonely," Ronin said, scratching the sphere's casing. "Tech has feelings if you know how to listen. You're people. You build amazing ships, General. But they're cold. You force them to work. You don't ask." Vexia walked to the viewport, standing beside him. She was close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "The Ethelguard were destroyed because their creations turned on them," she murmured. "Legends say they lacked a soul. The machines sought a connection they could not provide." She turned to face him. "And yet, a human, a species we consider primitive, accomplished in an hour what our greatest scientists have failed to do in centuries." "Maybe being primitive is an advantage," Ronin said, meeting her gaze. "We don't overthink it, we touch. We feel." Vexia looked down at his hand resting on the rail. Slowly, tentatively, she placed her hand over his. Her skin was cool, smooth as polished stone, contrasting with his warmth. She shivered slightly at the contact. "Warm," she whispered, echoing a sentiment he had heard before. "Why are you humans so warm?" "Burning energy." Ronin smiled slightly. "Running hot." The moment was broken by a crimson alert klaxon. The room bathed in red light. "General, to the bridge." A voice crackled over the comms. "Ambush!" Void-Stalker fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Vexia's expression hardened instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by the warrior. "Stay here," she commanded Ronin. "This is not your fight. If they hit this ship, it's my fight," Ronin argued. "And Sparky can help." "No," Vexia snapped. "If the Void-Stalkers see that drone, they will focus all fire on us. They hunt Ethelguard tech. That is why they are here. They track the energy spike." She grabbed her helmet. "Stay." "That is an order." She stormed out, sealing the door behind her. Ronin rushed to the viewport. Outside, the void was erupting in fire. The Void-Stalkers were nightmare ships, jagged hulls of bone and metal swarming the Valorian fleet like piranhas. The Vanguard shuddered as particle beams slammed into its shields. Ronin watched as Vexia's fighter squadrons launched, tiny specks of light against the darkness. He saw the flagship taking heavy hits. "They're going to breach," he muttered. Sparky chirped an urgent, aggressive sound. The sphere hopped onto the holographic console. Interfacing with the ship's computer, a tactical map appeared. "Shields at 40%, Ronin read. "Hull breach on decks 5 through 9. They're boarding." He looked at the door. "Locked." "Sparky, can you open that?" The sphere glowed white and the locking mechanism melted instantly. "Good boy." Ronin ran through the corridors, the ship shaking violently around him. Smoke filled the air. He found a discarded laser rifle from a fallen guard, checking the charge. He wasn't just a mechanic. Before the station, before the scrap, he had been a sergeant in the Earth Defense Force. He knew how to fight. He reached the bridge just as the blast doors blew inward. Void-Stalkers poured in, hulking insectoid creatures with chitinous armor and plasma scythes. The Valorian crew was fighting desperately, but they were being overwhelmed. In the center of the chaos, General Vexia was a whirlwind of motion, her plasma saber cutting through the attackers. But there were too many. A stalker knocked her weapon from her hand and pinned her to the command console, raising its scythe for the killing blow. "Hey, ugly!" Ronin yelled, stepping through the smoke. The stalker turned, hissing. It saw a small, unarmored human holding a rifle. It laughed, a wet clicking sound. "Leave her alone," Ronin said calmly. He didn't raise the rifle. He raised his hand, Sparky. "Sick 'em." The silver sphere shot past Ronin like a bullet. It didn't fire lasers. It didn't explode, it unraveled. In midair, the sphere disassembled into thousands of microscopic nanites, forming a swirling cloud of silver dust. The cloud moved with terrifying speed, passing through the stalker that held Vexia. The alien didn't even scream. It simply disintegrated. Its armor and flesh turned to dust in milliseconds. The bridge went silent. The swarm reformed into a blade-like shape, hovering protectively around Vexia. The remaining stalkers screeched and charged. Ronin walked forward, his eyes glowing with the reflection of the silver swarm. "Clear the bridge," he commanded. The swarm exploded outward. It was a massacre. The God-Killer lived up to its name. It moved faster than the eye could follow, dismantling the enemy at a molecular level. Within 10 seconds, the bridge was clear. The remaining stalker ships outside, sensing the awakening of an ancient predator, broke formation and fled into hyperspace. Silence returned to the bridge, heavy and thick. Vexia stood up, clutching her side where her armor was cracked. She looked at the carnage, then at the silver dust coalescing back into the small, harmless-looking sphere that landed on Ronin's shoulder. Ronin walked over to her, ignoring the stunned stares of the surviving crew. "You okay?" he asked. Vexia looked at him, really looked at him. The hierarchy, the species barrier, the thousands of years of protocol, it all crumbled. She saw the man. You saved me," she breathed. "You saved us all?" "We saved you," Ronin corrected, patting Sparky. He just needed a reason to fight. Vexia stepped closer, ignoring the pain in her side. She reached out and touched Ronin's face, her obsidian fingers tracing his jawline. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by something intense, something burning. "You woke a God-Killer," she whispered. "And you used it to save a Valorian." "I used it to save you," Ronin said softly. The distinction hung in the air, electric and undeniable. Commander Drax, Vexia's second-in-command, stumbled out from behind a console, looking at Ronin with a mixture of terror and jealousy. "General, this human, he possesses forbidden tech. He is dangerous, he must be contained." Vexia turned slowly to face her subordinate. The warmth vanished from her face, replaced by the icy mask of command. "Contain him?" she asked, her voice low. "This human just defeated a Void-Stalker invasion single-handedly. He commands power you cannot even comprehend." She turned back to Ronin, and for the first time in front of her crew, she smiled. It was a small, rare thing, terrifyingly beautiful. "He is not to be contained, Commander. He is to be honored." She took Ronin's hand, lacing her fingers with his. The contrast of black and white skin, of metal and flesh was striking. "And if anyone has a problem with that," she added, glancing at the humming sphere on Ronin's shoulder, "they can take it up with the God-Killer." Later that cycle, Ronin stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard. The ship was undergoing repairs, but the mood had shifted. He wasn't invisible anymore. Soldiers saluted when he passed. Engineers asked for his advice. But he didn't care about the accolades, he was waiting. Vexia joined him, wearing a simple silk robe that flowed around her like liquid moonlight. She didn't stand apart from him this time. She stood beside him, their shoulders touching. "The council is in an uproar," she said softly. "They want the drone, they want to dissect it." "They can try," Ronin said. "Sparky has a bite." Vexia laughed, a musical sound that eased the tension in his chest. "I told them that the drone is bonded to your biosignature, that removing it would detonate the core." A lie, of course, but effective. "Why protect me?" Ronin asked. "I'm just a scavenger, you're a high general." Vexia turned to him, her violet eyes shimmering. "Because, Ronin, in a universe of cold metal and hard logic, you brought warmth. You woke the machine not with code, but with kindness." She placed a hand on his chest over his heart. "You woke something in me, too." Ronin covered her hand with his own. The heat between them was palpable. A magnetic pull that defied biology and politics. "So what happens now?" he asked. Vexia leaned in, her forehead resting against his. "Now we fix the galaxy. You, me, and the God-Killer." She looked up, her gaze fierce and promising. "But first, show me more of this human warmth." Ronin smiled, leaning in to kiss her. It was a clash of worlds, a meeting of the primitive and the advanced, the soft and the hard. As their lips met, The silver sphere on his shoulder chirped happily and dimmed its lights, giving them the privacy of the stars. The scavenger and the general. The human and the alien. They had woken a weapon that could destroy worlds, but in doing so, they had built something far stronger. They had built a future where power wasn't about who had the biggest gun, but who had the strongest heart. And as the Vanguard jumped into hyperspace, leaving the ruins of the battle behind, Ronin knew one thing for certain. He would never be invisible again.